So this podcast is called Don't Live Stuck. And what I want to do with this podcast, Tammy, is share stories, experiences from people that we can learn from and use as motivation or inspiration, whatever people want to call it. And when you told me your story about your accident and how you went through that, that really, I thought like, oh man, I need to hear the whole story. So that's why you're here. You know, hopefully we can learn something from how you became Super Tammy.
Super Tammy, I like that.
There you go.
You go.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
To the podcast. But let me start by talking about your crazy love for running. I've told you before.
Yes.
Your post about your morning runs. For people that are listening, this is in Utah, so the winter is cold. And she's posting pictures. What time? Like 6 in the morning?
In the winter, we were out running around 5.
5 in the morning. So when I wake up around 6:30, 6 or 7, depending how lazy I'm feeling, the first thing I see on Facebook is Tammy's picture where she already ran. Like, what's your average mile every day?
Well, average is like 6 to 8, but we at least get, a 10 to 12 mile run in once a week. So that's about the average.
So picture this, me waking up, going on Facebook, and then seeing Tammy's picture that she's done running 8 miles by like 6:30. Yeah, that makes me feel pretty lazy every morning. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So where did the love for running start? How did you get into that? Did you do like track in school or...
I honestly, growing up, I grew up in a family of 9 kids. So my family did not have money to put me in sports. So I did not do sports. But in high school, occasionally I would run with friends and I would think, oh man, I would love to do a 5K one day. This was, I was 17 and I thought if I could only run twice around this block, I'd be happy. So it didn't come then. But after I had my first child, I needed some way to escape and do something for me. And so my husband's family, they were big into running, so they asked me to do a relay with them. So that was really where it started. And then that was me time. It was time that I could get out of the house and, just be me for a minute.
Wow.
So that's how I got into it.
So not only do you do it, but how did you find someone else, your running partner, that loves it just as much?
So I have a running partner. Her name is Nan, and it was one cold winter morning, and I was just really struggling getting up to go run because I didn't really have anything to look, like any races or anything going on. So I just put a post on Facebook asking if anybody wanted to help me get out of bed. That was it. That was the post. And she said, I'll run with you. I have Mondays off, so let's run Mondays together. She was a waitress at Dee's restaurant up in Ogden.
Was she a runner already?
Yeah, she's been running for years. She is also 30 years older than I am. So
oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a unique relationship that we have together. So she does all the runs with you? Yeah, she is. I half the time have to keep up with her. Like, she is a rock star. In fact, you should have her here instead of me.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So she was a waitress at Dee's up in Ogden before it closed, and she had been doing that for, 30 something years. So on Monday mornings, we would get up and run, and I knew that I would have to keep up with her on Mondays, so it made me get up all the other days and run. So it was just Facebook. And she lived right by me, so we would...
But now you guys run together every day, right?
Yeah, when Dee's closed, we started running almost every day together. There's rarely a run that we don't run together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when it comes to running that early, because like I said, this podcast is about everything. Is it a habit now that how long have you been doing it at that time, that early in the morning?
I think I started running early more when I started running with her, because I had to get up before my husband had to go to work, before the kids got up, just because if I didn't get it done early, it wasn't going to happen. So it didn't always start out early in the morning. So then.
How long has that been?
Maybe 7 years.
Okay.
or
So 7 years doing it in the morning, Monday through.
About 4 to 5 days a week.
Okay. So is it still hard sometimes? Are there mornings where you really have to fight to get up, or because you've been doing it all along, you just get up and do it now?
Most of the time it's pretty easy to get up because I know she's going to be waiting for me. And even some nights when I'm like, I am just so tired. I don't think I want to get up and run tomorrow. I don't have the guts to text her and say I'm not running in the morning. So most of the time it is habit. Sure, there are some days where I wake up and I think, oh, I just want to sleep in today. And then I just get up and because I know she's going to be waiting for me. So that helps.
So is it a habit that gets you out, you think, or an accountability partner? I'm curious because
Probably both.
both.
Maybe about 40% habit, 60% accountability. Can we throw that out there?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably more. A lot of the times though, we do say we'll sleep in tomorrow, but most likely we'll be awake. So if we're awake, we'll text each other and just go anyway. So maybe that's the habit part.
Dang. Okay. So you briefly told me, and I specifically told you, I don't know if you remember, when you were telling me your story, I said, don't tell me so much because then I would like to have you on the podcast and interview you to hear the full story. But you were hit by a car in one of your morning runs. So how was that? I mean, tell us a little bit of that experience.
So Nan and I signed up to run the Ogden Full Marathon. We had run a marathon the previous summer and we wanted to do it again. And so we got up to go train and we were pretty close to home. We'd run that way several times before. It was not something that was abnormal. It wasn't an abnormal place for us. It was very normal, just where we would go. And we were crossing the street in a crosswalk and a truck, a big F-350, let's just correct that from a car. No. It turned left and he didn't see us. So he struck Nan and I kind of took the brunt of it. She got clipped out of the way. And from what they told me, I flew up on the hood and flew 60 feet.
60 feet?
Yeah, from the impact.
60?
Yeah, 60.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got thrown pretty far, hit the pavement. I don't remember any of that, so.
Do you, and this is just me being curious, do you remember, the headlights coming? What's the last thing you remember?
No, the last thing I remember is seeing the sidewalk up ahead, where we were heading to. And this was the only time that I didn't look at the car turning left. The one time. We always look for the car turning left. We almost stop halfway through the crosswalk. And so I don't remember headlights. I remember seeing the sidewalk. And then I remember being incoherent on the pavement.
Wow.
So that's because I guess I do remember hearing things all around me. I couldn't see anything. It was black. I remember hearing paramedics, and that was it. I just don't really remember much from that.
And how long ago was this?
It was 5 years ago on March 12th.
5 years ago. That's when you were going to run down in San Diego, right?
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago. And how old were your kids at this time?
I had he was almost 5. So my son was almost 5 and my daughter was 2.5.
Wow. So what happened then? You got picked up, took you to the hospital. Once you came back, what was the story? What they tell you? What happened to you physically?
So they didn't tell me a whole lot at first. One thing that was huge for us was that the paramedics and the firemen were a block away. So I don't know if the flashing lights were part of a distraction, what distracted the driver. I don't know that side of it. And quite honestly, I don't.
Did you ever talk to him?
No,
to the driver?
I don't. care. I don't hold anything against him. For me, it's just better just to not worry about that.
Did he ever try to reach out?
He sent us flowers at the hospital, and I do remember hearing him praying, begging God behind, like around me. I don't know where he was, but that's one thing I do remember from being on the pavement. I remember hearing him. I haven't met him or seen him. That's part of I don't have a face, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But he did send us flowers in the hospital, and I know he was super sorry. I couldn't imagine being in his shoes. I'd almost rather be in mine. So he did reach out to us, but I don't know if those flashing, so back to that, I don't know if those flashing lights were distracting, but they were super close, and so they were able to run right over to me.
Where you were.
And so I met an EMT in the hospital. He was a phlebotomist at the hospital. So after the fact, and he told me he was so glad to see me because they thought I was going to die.
Wow.
And they didn't know. They send people to the hospital, right? And they don't know the outcome. But this particular EMT, he could tell me that I would have bled out if they weren't there. So that was one huge miracle that happened.
So you were in the hospital. Your friend, did she have to go to the hospital? Or
She did. We got sent to separate hospitals. I got sent to Davis. She got sent to McKay. So she was in the hospital for about the same amount of time as I was.
And when did you came back to conscious again after?
I was in and out for the first couple of days. I think they tried to keep me pretty sedated. But I do remember family being around. So that day was kind of a blur. But so you asked what happened. So I got to the hospital. The most major injury was I had an open tibia fracture. And that's what I could have bled out from. And so that was the most pressing thing. But everything else wasn't life-threatening. I have a great big long list of my injuries. In fact, I keep that, and it's like my prize trophy. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so there were doctors trying
broken
to
stuff, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, so I had the open tibia fracture. I broke my back, my neck, all of my ribs, and
I mean, it was 60 feet, so.
Yeah, but because I was a runner and I had strong lungs and I was healthy, they tell me that is why I was able to withstand that and not have life-threatening injuries.
Isn't that crazy? You were able to withstand that because you were a runner, and then you got hit when you were running.
I know, running saved my life, but it also almost took it. So isn't that ironic? Yep.
So your husband's reaction to this, what does he tell you? I mean, you don't remember, but
yeah.
Who told him? How did that? I mean, getting a call at 6 a.m, 5:30 with your kids still sleeping.
It was just after 6 a.m. when he got the call from police. And it's kind of interesting, now that it's been 5 years, we open up a little bit more about what happened. And even my son, that was 5 at the time, he opens up a lot. But so every year on March 12th, we kind of sit around as a family and we talk about this. And my husband says, I joke with him, like, I'm surprised you even answered the phone, because I'll be out for a run and I'll call him to wake him up,
Mm-hmm.
He won't answer. He never answers. But that one time he answered, even a number he didn't recognize. So the police called him, and which is funny because I didn't have ID or anything on me, but I was conscious enough
to give him your number?
To give him.
No way. After flying 60 feet.
Yeah. So I told the police, I said, my first thought was, have you called my husband? And they swarmed me. So I do remember that. They kind of were like, wait, no, who's your husband? Trying to get the information from me before maybe I passed out again or whatever. And they said, and it's funny because when you're in shock, right? You have things in your head that are, I just remember just thinking all of these things. And so I gave them my husband's number, and then I remember telling them, there's one person that I know that's really prominent in the community. And I said, if my husband doesn't answer, call him, because I knew someone would have his number. One of the firemen or somebody would have his phone number. So anyway, they got a hold of my husband. We had him call my running partner's husband. And so he was able to communicate, and they said, your wife's been in an accident. He knew I'd been out running, so he was kind of confused. Like, how could my wife be in an accident? She was running. And so he went down to the scene of the accident, and he told me he saw a car that was pretty banged up, but that was from the other accident that they were there cleaning up. But I did take that bumper. I did some good damage to that truck, so, I'm pretty strong that way.
Yeah. No, what's a Ford? They fall off.
Yeah. Thanks. No, I'm just kidding. He saw the other car, and he was pretty scared. He didn't really quite know, and at that point, I'd been transported to the hospital, so they told him where to go, and he went over there. But he took the kids. He just grabbed them out of bed, put them in the car, and took them over there, not really knowing what was going on.
So pain-wise, I always wonder, people always say, oh, you don't feel it in the moment because of everything. Was it really that much more painful after, like when you were in the hospital, or I don't know, what was the worst part when it came to pain? Or was it the recovery? Was it everything?
So at first I didn't feel anything. In fact, like I was telling you, my world was black. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't really feel anything. But when they picked me up off the street and put me in the ambulance, I remember my leg hurt so bad. And I just remember them saying, give her more morphine or whatever, like pump her more morphine. And then I couldn't really feel anything after that. But I tell you what, though, when it came to recovery, the most painful thing were my ribs. So if anybody ever says breaking a rib feels like they're going to die, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know it's terrible. It is terrible. You can't breathe.
Because you can't do anything, right? Once you break a rib, you just just wait.
Yeah. And you just have to, they can't brace them, and then you can't take deep breaths. And
can't laugh.
Well, they did say laughter is the best medicine because it strengthens your lungs, right?
Oh, really?
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. So I broke all of my ribs.
Wow.
And so that was pretty painful.
Hearing from your husband side of the story, how did he feel when he saw you, when he got to the hospital? And I mean, did they tell him, look, we don't know if she's gonna make it? Or when he got there, did they say, okay, yeah, she'll be able to make it?
I'm not sure exactly the timeline, but he does tell me that as soon as they told him that there were no life-threatening injuries, he felt much better at that point. But so at the beginning, he said when he walked in, it looked like a murder scene, really. There was blood everywhere, just everywhere. It was covered in sheets. He could only see from here up.
Wow.
Well, from my chin up, so he could only see my head.
Yeah.
And he was puking in the corner. Like he couldn't handle it.
It was that bad.
It was that bad. He could not handle it. And so we had people that we were super close to that came to the hospital right away, and they kind of took over the part of making sure I was okay and he was okay, because it was quite traumatic for him as well.
I bet.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the hospital for?
I was in the hospital for a week, and then I went to rehab for 2, and then they sent me home. And then I had a little relapse, and I had to go back to the hospital for another week. That was not very much fun.
So total about like a month?
Yeah, it was about a month. But then when I was home, I was doing home health. I had nurses that came twice a day, and physical therapists that came every day to help make sure I was getting all the things that I needed.
Now, man, there's so many things I want to talk about, because it affects every single aspect of you and your family's life. So let's start with your children. How was it when you came back home? How long did it take you to go back to full Tammy activity?
It was a long time. So this is something that my son opens up to us a little bit more now. He told us just a couple weeks ago when we were doing our little family reminiscing, right? He said, Mom, those those couple weeks were really, really hard because all of a sudden, he's 5, he has his mom. I was a stay-at-home mom at that time, I didn't work, and all of a sudden mom's gone and I don't get to be home because dad's gone too. He's at the hospital. And so he said it was really hard for him because he was just going from house to house, whoever could take care of him, because they all had stuff going on too, Yeah. But for the most part, our families dropped everything and they took the kids and they were able to take care of them. Now, when I came home, it was a whole other ball game, right? Mom's home. What do you think a 5-year-old thinks when mom's home?
Everything's normal.
Everything's normal. But I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even take care of myself. I could barely breathe. I could barely...
Were you just on bed rest for
Yeah,
ever?
I could get up and take care of personal things, and then I had to go right back down. I was kind of walking, I guess, a little bit with a walker, but it was very...
With broken ribs. I had a cousin who broke one rib mountain biking, and he was dead.
They push you hard. I guess all the broken ribs, it was just, everything was broken. So I didn't know what hurt at the moment. It was just everything was broken. But to him, I should have been normal. So it threw a hole.
Yeah.
And so we had my mom came and stayed with us for a while. And then my mother-in-law came and stayed with us for another while. And it was just hard because they weren't grandma anymore. They had to take care of them.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for them when I came home. They thought mom's going to be back to normal. And then the hardest part was when I went to the doctor and he said, you're going to have to go back into the hospital. I had an infection in my leg pretty bad. So I had to have 3 more surgeries and be on IV antibiotics for a week. And it was so hard to tell my kids, I'm going to have to go back to the hospital. So that was probably the hardest conversation. And so I went back to the hospital, and it was really hard on them. It was really hard.
How long did it take for everything? Did they tell you you wouldn't be able to run, or was that never in question?
No, that wasn't really a question. My doctors, I had a really, really good doctor. He knew how important running was, and every appointment I would say, when do I get to run again? Well, as soon as you feel good enough. There wasn't any question that with my broken leg, that I wouldn't be able to attempt running again. It would just be level of pain, or, I had a rod and screws in my leg, how would that be? But my doctor assured me you'll be able to run again. So that was huge to me.
So you got hit March 12th, right? When did you take your first run again after that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so this is where my story is different because I kind of would just go for little walks. That first year, we would ride bikes. So we started riding bikes just to get out and do something. But then...
Were you nervous? I'm curious,
Was I nervous to run again?
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything hurt. I mean, my leg, my back, my neck.
But I also mean, were you nervous when you heard a car coming?
Yeah, so for the whole first... I remember having a conversation with a friend. I went over to their house and I just said, I just wish I could cross the street. I was in not even a busy neighborhood. I said, it scares me just to even think about crossing the street. So that was huge, trying to get over that. And the whole first year I was doing physical therapy. And then I had to do treatments for my neck, for whiplash. I mean, there was so many things. So I didn't really try to run again because I was having back issues. I was just walking at that point. And then I attempted to maybe run an 1/8 of a mile, and it was so painful. I just couldn't do it. But I still got out. I still tried to be somewhat normal. And then the following year, I found out I was pregnant. And so I couldn't run at that point either. So and that was something too, is the doctors didn't know if I'd be able to have kids again. And that was another thing that was important to me. So, I mean, while that was wonderful, it did push back running. So there were different things. So it probably took me, so my son was born almost 2 years after. And I don't know, it was probably another 6 months before I really started running again.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have come back to running after that long of a break.
So here's the thing about coming back. Well, it's because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And at that point, Nan had been running. She had already ran a couple half marathons. Like, she already was out. And
was she just in and out of the hospital pretty much?
Well, she did the hospital and she did the rehab, but her injuries weren't as severe as mine. And she started running with her niece, who really pushed her to come back. And it was so hard for her. But I also had, pregnancy in the mix that she didn't have. So there were just things that were different about her recovery. So seeing her out doing that, I was a little jealous. I'll just be right up front. I mean, it was hard because I'm thinking, why am I not at that point yet? But I had to remember where I was too. And so, it took me about 2.5 years to get back. And I had thoughts of, well, I'm not going to be anywhere near as good as what she's doing. How can I run with her again? But she encouraged me, and she would just say, okay, let's just run to that bridge that was, 100 feet away. Like, let's just run there, and then we'll walk, and let's just run there. Wow. So we took baby steps to get there.
Now, this is a question I probably should have asked before this recording.
Oh, gosh.
But was it always comfortable for you to just talk about it, or was there a time when you just didn't want to talk about the accident? How did that affect you?
This is probably the first real conversation I've had about it. I mean, I tell people, but it's not something that I just tell people. It's not like a conversation starter. In fact, I kind of hide from it sometimes. Just because I don't want that to be who I am, the person that got hit by a truck and whatever. But yeah, it was really hard for me to talk about for a while.
But do you see at the same time, though, how that can be helpful or inspiring to others?
Yeah, we did do some where we would go and speak with women and kind of, but only a few. And it was really hard at first. I probably cried the whole time, and they thought,
I bet,
well, who is that? What is she talking about? Because at that point it was so fresh, and I hadn't seen the comeback yet when I had done those things. So this is the first
aftermath
after my comeback, per se, I guess you would say.
Okay. So we get out of this whole story of being hit, being in the hospital, getting out. And this, like you said, you don't want to be known or whatever as the girl that got hit. And that's also not the reason or the thing that I was most curious about. It was just context for the questions that are coming up now. So I'm always fascinated by the things that we do. Like, I love reading self-development books and stuff like that. And the question always seems to be, what would you do today if you were dying tomorrow? That seems to be oh my gosh, that's what makes everybody want to act all of a sudden. And I always wonder, why do we wait? Why do we have to think in such extremes to be able to do something today that we enjoy? Now, you went through that in real life. How did that change your lifestyle? Did it? I mean, I don't know if it did, but how did that affect you?
Well, I saw what my life could be like without something that I loved, because I was running before, so it didn't necessarily change the fact that I loved running, but it made me see that it could be taken away, so I don't take it for granted now. I also want to show my kids that you can overcome something so hard, and you can still do something. You don't have to let that be your reason for stopping.
Yeah. And being someone of faith, how was that applied to your whole process? Did you have times where you kind of question it, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why weren't my son is young. How did that play in your whole story?
Not once during the time of my accident when I was in the hospital did I think, why me? I saw so many miracles, and I saw so many small things. Like, it was just every day the triumph of, I can walk today, or I can take one step. It's just those small little triumphs that I didn't think that once. But when I started running again, and it was extremely painful, I mean, it hurt so bad. And I remember having a conversation with my husband saying, what if it's just not something I can do anymore? What am I going to do? How am I going to be able to tell Nan that I can't run anymore? And this is who I am. I'm a runner. This is who I am. And so there were times during that I thought, why did this have to happen? Because it is such a huge part of who I am. I wondered why. But then now looking back, there's just, we're asked to go through hard things. That's what makes us better. It's what makes us stronger. And so I thought that there were points that I did think, why did I have to go through this? It completely sucks sometimes. And it hurts. And I still, I can tell you, I still have days where that's the hard part about getting up, is when I hurt, like my back hurts.
So it still hurts?
Oh yeah, it hurts all the time, especially in the winter with the cold. It hurts. But I know once I get out and run, I'm going to feel better. And it just gets my body moving again. And so it helps. So I never did really think, why me in the beginning? Because I did see evidence that God loves me and he cared. So
now, as far as like enjoying every minute now that you have and all that stuff that comes post an experience like that, did you see an increase of that for you, or like your children, for example? Did you feel like that helped you live better? And I'm asking because one of the people that will come here to be interviewed is someone who went through a battle with cancer. And he was in his early 30s, if I'm not mistaken, or late 20s, something like that, super young. And he was into politics a lot. Like, that was his life. But he said that when he was going through that, he just said, look, God, if I make it through this, I promise I'm just not going to waste time anymore. And it wasn't like a deal he was making. It was more like he saw, like, oh my gosh, like, I've been spending so much time with that and my wife and my daughter. So once he came out of that, he stopped pretty much everything with politics and focused on his family and church. Did you have something like that with you till this day that you think you can trace back to that experience?
Yeah, I did have a few things that I was doing at that time that took me away from my family quite often. And I remember being in the hospital thinking, why am I even bothering with that? It's not being productive. It's not, rewarding me. So I did have a few of those moments, and it does help me see, like, I'm not going to say some days I still get, tired, and, sometimes I snap.
You mean you're still human?
Yeah, I'm still human.
Geez.
Right?
I thought you weren't.
I'm not super Tammy every day. But there are times when I remember, like, okay, this almost got taken away from you. You almost weren't able to be with your kids. Like, you need to enjoy that.
So as far as lessons that you took from this, besides looking for cars, watching out for cars.
Yeah. Look at the car turning left. Yes.
What are 2 or 3 lessons that you can share with people maybe who are not going through something like that, but again, something that they're probably taking for granted? Right. And what are 2 or 3 things you can share?
So one thing I think is that we don't need these big experiences to say, like, my family's important or God's important or whatever's important to you. You don't need to go through something so crummy. I like to say, I got smacked. I got taken to the ground, right? Like, I needed to be taken out for me to realize what's important. Yeah. You don't need to be taken out to find out what's important in your life. Yeah. Really cherish, the small moments and really enjoy things that you love. Like I loved running, but I almost needed that bitter to make it sweet, right? So now I know what it was like when it hurt really bad. And now I see that even though it's painful, I'm stronger now than I was before because it means so much more to me. So I guess what I'm saying is the first thing is to not let something big happen, to appreciate the small, simple things that you enjoy, and the small things that are important to you. So that would be number one.
Number two.
Okay, and then number two would be that we can do hard things. Like we can overcome anything. I hear a lot of people saying, oh man, it just hurts so much to walk down the street, right? I would run if it didn't hurt so bad. I'm not discrediting them because I know, like sometimes it does hurt bad and you don't want to go. But I think sometimes we let pain and discomfort stop us from doing something that's important. So some runners struggles with knees. I'm grateful every day that I didn't have knee damage because that can be crippling. But if you're feeling a little bit of pain, if you keep going, it's going to feel better because I've witnessed that. Like I hurt so bad, but it was so important to me that now I don't hurt as much as I would if I hadn't kept running.
So I just heard you say you broke your back, you broke your neck, all of your ribs, leg, a bunch of stuff. And then you just said you're grateful you didn't break your knee.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
How do you keep that attitude though? Like honestly, how do you keep that grateful, cheerful attitude after something like that happens? Because not everybody keeps that. You know what I mean? Like some people live with that the rest of their lives. Right. And I mean, we can talk about meds and, they'll be on pills all day, every day, depressed. And I mean, I'm no one to judge whether they're right or wrong because only they know what they went through. But were you like this before or did this happen after? I'm curious to know.
I don't know. And I'm honestly, don't let this deceive you. I'm not the most positive person in the whole world. But this really, I am grateful because it could have been a lot worse. It truly could have been a lot worse. I mean, who gets hit by a truck? 2 women get hit by a truck and both of them survive and both of them are running again. How often do you hear that in the news? You don't. You don't hear it.
Were you on the news? Now that you mentioned that?
I was on the news.
Yeah?
My moment of fame that I want to take away. No, I'm just kidding. No, I was on the news and you don't hear about that. And so I guess thank you for allowing me to share that story because it is something to be grateful for. And we talk about it every time we run, that we're grateful that we're together still. And we're able to run and we're able to run long miles because it could have been totally different.
One.
It could have been totally different.
Have you ran through the same place?
No.
Never? Ever since?
And one day I will, but that's not today.
Interesting.
No, I drive that way. I still drive that way, but I don't, I do not run that way anymore. In fact, when I see people crossing that intersection, in fact, it makes me really, really nervous.
Really?
Yeah, it does make me nervous. So
maybe I'll join you guys when you do run.
Okay, you're invited.
Intersection.
I don't think I can get my friend to do it, but maybe I can one day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hopefully it's not in the middle because I won't do the 8 miles. But you call me when you're heading.
Okay, we'll just go walk that one day. How about that? We'll start there.
We'll just start there.
Yeah.
We can start there, and then after that I can leave. But
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
I think just, we can do it. We can right now. Can I talk about COVID?
Yes, you can.
So
I mean, who's not being affected by it?
I know. So this one thing, like, this big thing happens to me, right? And I'm grateful. And then now the whole world is shutting down because of this COVID-19 stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so my friend and I, we couldn't go to San Diego to run our big hurrah for our 5-year anniversary. And we had been looking forward to that. And we went on a run on that Sunday that we were supposed to run the San Diego.
Which was March 12th when you got hit. So.
Right. So we went on a run that day, and we went somewhere we had never gone, down to the nature preserve in Layton, and it was beautiful. It was quiet. Nobody was there. And it wasn't like normal runs for us. You know, we really stopped and we thought about what was happening in our world and how scared we were, you know, and we thought, we've done this March 12th before, like we can do it again. But even, you know, sometimes things are different, but we had so many people that helped us through that time. And I think that we can overcome hard things. Like we can do hard things and we can help each other out. And we felt that day, even though the world is chaos. You know, we've done it before. Let's do it again. Let's conquer. Let's be strong and help each other out. So that's the one thing, the biggest thing for me.
And I think we can all use some of that right now.
Right.
You know, before we started recording this, we were talking just about how everything's so weird right now. You know, people not knowing what to do, who to let in their house, where to go, where to eat. I mean, everything's just out of normal. Like nothing is normal. So we can definitely use some of that cheerful Super Tammy attitude.
Yeah.
And I called you Super Tammy before we started, but now I didn't know your story. So now after listening to it, you are Super Tammy.
Tell that to my kids. Okay?
You can use that every March 12th.
I'm Super Tammy. We've got this. So good deal.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in today, and thanks for sharing your amazing story.
You're welcome.
I really hope that people can benefit and learn and make the most of their lives, because like I said at the beginning, that's what this is called. Don't live stuck. I understand and I believe that we will get stuck at times, but let's just not live there. Let's just not stay there. And you showed that by not staying in the hospital, not staying in that mentality. You are running again, so you're a certified don't live stuck person.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Okay.